Hey everybody, thanks so much for joining us right here on The Right View. Tonight we're joined by veteran Navy Intel officer, host of Human Events Daily. You know him, Jack Posobiec. Jack, thanks so much for joining us back here on The Right View. We always love to talk to you, and I think we would be remiss if we didn't acknowledge the fact that the last 2 weeks or so have been rather interesting, especially in America. I think the biggest thing being talked about right now is the situation with the Supreme Court, the Roe v. Wade decision, and basically the response by the left to this entire situation. Now, you tend to keep your ear to the ground on social media. What do you think about the whole thing? What happens next? How do we continue to see this play out?
Well, Lara, thanks so much again for having me on. It's always an honor to come here on The Right View with you. I mean, I remember the last time we were on, we ended up having a great talk about family and just kids and being parents. And so it's amazing that, here we are, Roe v. Wade, which delves into so many of those issues. Now, where I sit here on my studio, I'm right on Capitol Hill. So I'm only about 2 blocks down from the Supreme Court. And since this leak came out, and I contend actually, and we talked about this on Human Events Daily, that I don't think this was just a leak. I think this is actually part of an operation. I think there is something much larger behind this that's driving it. I think timing of it is very suspect, but you're also seeing in terms of, so there's sort of a 2-pronged response to it. Number one, it's the hunt for the leaker. Who did this? Did they use court documents to do so, or court devices? What kind of information could they still potentially have? Because keep in mind that if someone was in place, and when I was in the intel community, the idea was the phrase of placement and access. That's how you would assess a source's capabilities. So what's their placement? What's their access? So if somebody had placement and access to be able to retrieve, photocopy, and then get the copies of a full 93-page opinion to a journalist at Politico, then it would stand to reason that that same source would also have placement and access for other opinions that may be in draft, that may be in this status. So we know that the Supreme Court has decisions on the docket that have yet to come out yet on the Second Amendment, on highly charged race issues. Affirmative action is currently on the docket right now. And so one thing that I've heard coming out of the Supreme Court is that they're very worried that this could be a situation where not only is this the leak, but this is only the first leak. And could there be more opinions coming out drip by drip by drip? We just don't know. And so that's why the Supreme Court, and interestingly enough, they don't necessarily have an investigatory agency at the Supreme Court, because this is just something that never happens, right? The Supreme Court, the intelligence community leaks more than the Supreme Court does. This is an institution that does not leak. I mean, Ruth Bader Ginsburg used to talk about that. She said, those who talk don't know, and those who know don't talk. So this is obviously unprecedented. And when I say that's an operation, it's clearly being done to influence the will of the court. That's number one. But then also it's being done to drive a massive wedge inside the anti-Biden coalition going into midterms. Because, Lara, you had a situation where there are people who were, members of the conservative movement, members of the America First movement that were already predisposed to being against Biden. But you had independents, you had moderates, and even disaffected post-liberals, people like, Glenn Greenwald and your Tim Pools out there, Michael Tracy's, who were just really pounding this administration. But then here comes the issue of abortion, the one issue that is so highly polarized because both sides see it as a moral issue. This is the one thing that could really shatter that coalition. And so, of course, they're trying to do everything they can to distract from this administration's failures when it comes to the economy, when it comes to inflation, when it comes to our gas prices, and certainly when it comes to foreign policy and national security. Now they're going to try to completely change the conversation from all of that and only focus on this.
Of course. Yeah, I mean, this is like their Hail Mary of sorts.
Yes.
When you take a step back from this whole thing, first of all, I just think as an American, it is so disappointing, so shocking to me that we found ourselves in a place in America where you have probably one of our only bastions left, the Supreme Court, one of our only institutions that has truly felt sacred. It feels like everything else has been politicized, everything else has been sullied in some way, shape, or form. And then you have the Supreme Court, which, as you just talked about with Ruth Bader Ginsburg, once said, and the way it's always been so highly esteemed, the fact that there was an individual that was willing to risk everything that we have believed in as the Supreme Court, what it is, what it stands for, the purpose there. We're supposed to believe as Americans that, politics doesn't play into anything. These Supreme Court justices are supposed to be, they make the biggest decisions in the lives of every American citizen, right? They're tasked with that job. So the fact that there was a leak, that someone, one of the very few people very clearly who have access, as you just so eloquently described, to this information would violate it in this way, I just find incredibly upsetting as an American citizen. It just kind of tells me that, what we've seen happen, how polarized things in general have become. There's constant fighting between the left and the right. There's just constant battles on mainstream media and social media. We felt like this was the one thing we had left, Jack, and it's gone. And honestly, I never really considered the Supreme Court before to be an entity that could be violated in this way. And here we found ourselves. What does it tell you about the current state of America, though, that something like this was able to happen?
Well, Lara, there's one thing that Americans hate, and that's cheating. And that's when something is seen as unfair, right? Americans respect the process. Americans respect the rules. They want to see a fair outcome. We love competition, right? We love competition in this country. That's one of the things that America's founded on. It is one of the quintessential features of America. But if you have cheating, if you have someone that is going against the rules, look at any major league sporting event, and what we always argue about, the refs and the umps, and they made the wrong call, and should they have done this, and we're 2 feet down, or his toes were in, et cetera, right? We get very upset about that because we want things to be decided fairly. And what it seems has been done here is that this decision is being interfered with by someone who does not have the right to put this kind of pressure on, because remember, this is not a ruling. And I've seen some people kind of misreporting it as if it's already a done deal. It's not a done deal. This is a declaration of an offensive, a political offensive, to be run at the Supreme Court itself in a way that we've really never seen before in American politics. Because even though conservatives vehemently oppose the Roe v. Wade decision, the fighting against it has always been political and through legal channels and challenges like the Mississippi law that's under review right now. It's never been through these sort of abrogation of the process. But what's really fascinating to me, as someone who's trying to figure out, like everyone else, the speculation is rife. People are, rumors are swirling within, who had connections to Politico, which clerks, who knew who was out at the bar with so-and-so.
Jack, it's Politico. Do we really think that a conservative is going to Politico? Do we really think? No. Right. So,
absolutely.
You kind of have a bit of a guess what the individual was, at least their political leanings, right?
Well, what's so interesting, though, is that, to achieve a Supreme Court clerkship, that's like, winning the lottery among all the lottery winners.
Oh, so coveted.
It's so hard to achieve.
Right.
And obviously as a springboard for so many, Senator Hawley was a Supreme Court clerk, Senator Cruz, within the profession, you can almost write your own ticket after a successful clerkship. So someone who worked to the top of their game, to the top of their class, at whatever school they went to compete that much and then throw it away essentially because of this, because when they are found, and they will be found, that's pretty much the end of their career as a lawyer. They might be able to go on to become some kind of, pro-choice, Planned Parenthood spokesperson, or maybe some professor, somewhere, but practicing law, no way. It's not going to happen.
Yeah, honestly, it's also shocking. The thing I wonder is if this person, once whoever it is exposed, do you think that folks on the left, all the pro-choice folks, pro-abortion folks, are these people going to view this individual as a martyr of sorts? Like, I kind of feel like this is going to be like their new champion, right? They're going to really hold this person in high esteem, and just it's going to be kind of gross to see, I think.
Well, you're right. They're going to try to make them some kind of martyr. They're going to say, oh, and they threw away their career because they cared so much about this, and look at what a great person they were. But when it comes down to it, that's not our system. Our system is that we have 9 justices. They are appointed by the president. They are confirmed by the Senate, and it is their job to conduct judicial review over the laws that are passed by Congress and signed by the president. And, I imagine you probably, like myself, were not in agreement with the legal reasoning of Roe v. Wade, the original decision back in 1973, where they seem to have created a right that, I don't know about you, Lara. I've read the Bill of Rights. My copy does not state anything about abortion in there. I can see, I've found the freedom of speech. I've found, press, religion, assembly, redress of grievances, keep and bear arms. Find that all day long in the
second one.
Right, it's right there, protecting the first. But I haven't been able to find any right to abortion. And what the court did in 1973 was to take something and read it into the Constitution, as opposed to looking at the 10th Amendment and said any rights that are not specifically enumerated are thus still retained by the states and by the people, which essentially means this is something that should be conducted at the state level. That's the legal reasoning here.
Right. And I think that is important to point out, because the folks on the left and many of the folks in the mainstream media would have you believe that because this information was leaked, again, this is not a decision, nothing has been written in stone. None of the Supreme Court justices have even spoken about this particular situation. If this were to happen, it does not outlaw abortions outright in America. What it says is that the decision as to how abortion should be conducted, if they should be, at what stage of pregnancy, et cetera, that is all up to the states. And people within the states get to vote on that. So everyone's voice actually gets heard. And I think if you're a person that believes that our country was founded not to have a centralized federal government with ultimate power, but to give power to the people, this is the best way to do it, right? It's kind of shocking to hear the way that they continue to lie about it within the media. The Democrats continue to cry wolf about something, as they always do, and they're making it into something it's not, a la the Don't Say Gay bill, also known by the real name as the Parental Rights Bill in Florida. They just make things up, Jack, and they think that people are going to buy it hook, line, and sinker. That's essentially what's going on with this right now.
Well, it shows me that they don't have a very high view of their own followers and their own supporters, if they're just that willing to directly obfuscate from the truth and tell them things that are so incredibly misleading. I actually saw Representative Jayapal was on TV talking about this, and she said, well, I don't think that the Supreme Court has the right to do this. I said, boy, have I got something to tell you. Boy, have I got news for you, Congresswoman, because they have. But it's actually amazing to me because, well, wait, if they don't have the right to do it now, how did they have the right to do it in 1973? Right. Yeah. But I actually agree with you that they don't have the right to do this, because I don't think the Supreme Court should be deciding. It's this really weird kind of meta situation where I actually agree with you, but not for the reasons that you think I do.
It's just so what a time to be alive, I got to say. We've in the past, I feel like 6 years or so in America, I mean, things have gotten really crazy. The fact that we're even having a conversation about something like this happening at the level of the Supreme Court is really, it's shocking. All of it is kind of wild, but man, we're here for the ride. We're watching, we're paying close attention. We'll see what happens. No doubt the Democrats are going to try to utilize this in every way, shape, or form as they head towards the midterm elections. They're desperate for a win somehow. They're desperate to get people involved, to drum up support, to get anyone interested in anything they have to say, because everything they've done so far has been pretty awful for America, right?
Well, and what's unfortunate is that if you look at some of the videos that are coming out now, just in the last few evenings, here in Washington, D.C., that I was able to see myself at the Supreme Court, but then also in Los Angeles, New York, Seattle, Portland, these same forces of violence that took to the streets in the summer of rage of 2020, that committed the largest mass riots that we've seen in the United States in U.S. history in terms of damages, those same forces were never effectively dealt with, prosecuted, rolled up in 2020 or in the aftermath of 2020. And so now they're being reactivated. They're coming back online, and suddenly, and we know what's going on here. They will find any excuse to turn to violence. And so you're seeing people attacking police officers in the name of women's rights, right? They're not doing it for women's rights. They're doing it because these are violent individuals. These are violent organizations who seek the destabilization, Antifa, BLM, some of the more violent cells of it or groups of it. They seek the destabilization of America, the destabilization of our society, the destabilization of family units, which obviously Roe v. Wade plays a huge part into. That's what they're looking for. And they're just using this as an excuse to get the band back together because, oh, look, we're in an election year again. So they're going to go right back to the same playbook they did in 2020.
Amazing. I bet if you put a MAGA flag out there, things would be a little different in terms of arrests made and people held accountable for
things. Well, not
things.
just MAGA. We got to be ultra MAGA now.
Oh, yeah,
ultra MAGA,
right.
According to our president.
That's correct. I'll put myself in that camp. Ultra MAGA all day long.
Ultra MAGA. I love it.
I love it. Now, the other big thing, obviously, that has been really in the news lately is Elon Musk's purchase of Twitter.
Yes.
I mean, we've seen some major meltdowns from media outlets, the left on social media. Give me your thoughts on Elon Musk's Twitter purchase. What do you think?
Well, I think it's fantastic. I mean, to look at somebody who's come along to become a billionaire, but then do something for the people. I know one other billionaire who's done something like that once, but to actually, put their money where their mouth is and step up and know that they're going to face attacks and the weaponization of information against them from, what did Chuck Schumer say? 6 ways from Sunday to get back at you, but still be willing to do it because they believed in what they were doing, even if it didn't make financial sense or economic sense or really stand for personal gain. I think it's quite amazing. And Elon Musk is a guy, I've never been able to quite figure him out because, he's got the green car thing out there. He's got, obviously SpaceX. He's very tight with the CCP, which, I'm not going to overlook that, right? The guy's got plants out there in Xinjiang where the Uyghurs are. But at the same time, he's also putting his money where his mouth is when it comes to freedom of speech. So I would say I'm bullish on it because I think that he's a guy that when he commits to something, he's going to see it through. And if he is successful, if he's actually successful at returning Twitter and really just the idea of the internet in general back to a free flow of information, having the public square. He's even talked, by the way, of potentially taking the Twitter algorithm and their source code and making it open source and making an open source Twitter as a protocol. So the same way that, for example, if you have Verizon or T-Mobile or Patriot Mobile or AT&T, but you could still text each other, you can still call each other. If you have an iPhone, if you have an Android, you can call each other. Well, then, if you've got Truth Social or if you've got Twitter or if you've got Facebook, you could communicate across the platforms if you're using an open source protocol. I think that's very powerful. And I think it's very damaging to anyone out there who's trying to really control the narrative just by allowing people to communicate. And going back to that First Amendment, it's not just about freedom of speech. It's also about the freedom of assembly and the freedom of association, because people can meet, they can connect. That's really how the populist nationalist movements got started, was through the internet and through the democratization of information through social media. Of course, Trump utilized Twitter. You can't really talk about his presidency and his campaign without describing how he utilized that mass media communication the same way that JFK utilized TV, the same way that FDR utilized radio.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like we finally have a bit of a glimmer of hope. It's felt really bad for the past year and a half. I mean, honestly, since Joe and Kamala took over control of the country, quite frankly, since the election in 2020, things have just felt like they've gone downhill in America. People are, obviously paying the most money they've ever paid for things. Everything feels like we have turned and gone the opposite direction of where we were headed as a country. And so I feel like to have someone out there like Elon Musk saying, you know what, at least in this space, I want to make things fair, because it's felt like none of this that we're going through as a country has been fair. Whether you want to talk about the 2020
that's exactly
election,
what we were just saying. It's about fairness. Yeah. It's all about fairness. He's not coming in saying, I'm going to help conservatives or anything like that. Not at all. He just says, we're going to have rules. We're going to apply them fairly. That's it.
Right. But like these people on the left, the folks on the left, doesn't it say everything about who they are, then, Jack, that they are so outraged that someone wants to make it a fair platform? The fact that you have folks that have been working at Twitter now for, God knows how long, these people that are so outraged that Elon Musk is coming in and basically leveling the playing field, what does that say about who they are and what they really believe?
Well, I actually disagree because he's had some great tweets lately. I mean, he tweeted about, he criticized Twitter for censoring the Hunter Biden laptop story, which was the biggest October surprise that's ever dropped. That was never allowed to drop because Twitter and Facebook suppressed it. Got a copy of the laptop right over here, by the way, in case you guys need any. That I actually have offered Elon a copy of it. If he'd like a copy, I'd be more than happy to facilitate that, so we can really see what's going on and how the sausage is made behind the scenes. But he said something recently that I actually disagree with, because he said, to me, balance is achieved when you have an equal anger on the far left and the far right. And I said, I don't think that's possible, actually, because, and I get where he's coming from. He's saying, I want it to be fair. I want it to be equitable. I want it to be balanced. I want to have one set of rules for everyone and not one set, not a different hierarchy of rules. But the difference is that nobody on the right is trying to censor the left, but everyone on the left is trying to censor the right. So by definition, you are always going to have more anger on the left if the right is allowed to speak.
Yeah, I mean, the fact that you have the Biden administration now implementing a disinformation board, right? I mean, this is
in the same week, by the way, in the same week.
Like, they're so panicked about the idea of anything being equal in any
Laura,
sense.
I gotta ask you, Lara. Did you watch Nina Yankovic's TikTok videos? Be honest. Did you watch any of those?
Oh my gosh, that is the most upsetting thing I have ever seen. And bless her heart, somebody please give her a stage and a mic and put her in a dark room, because she really needed to get that out. I've never seen something quite like that. That's the person, though, Jack, that we're putting in charge. She's the one that gets to say whether or not what we're talking about is legitimate to shut us down. And again, as you just pointed out, it comes all from one side to the other. It is always folks on the left censoring folks on the right. It is not ever the other direction. And I mean, honestly, it is a really frightening place that we're even talking about this in America. You see stuff like this in North Korea and China. This is straight out of George Orwell's 1984. And here we are in 2022 in America, and we're legitimately talking about it.
Right, and that's, it's literally, for people who haven't read the novel, right? So Winston Smith is the main character of 1984, and he actually works for the Ministry of Truth, and his job is to go into the past, and that whenever the party has changed their position on something, his job is to go into the past and then delete any reference to something that the party had said in the past, or individuals who have been kicked out of the party, right? His job is to delete all those references, like going into Wikipedia, basically, and changing everything to make it standard with what's going on today. And then, of course, he takes those articles, and of course, when it was written in the 1940s. We didn't have new technology, so it was actually newspaper clips that he was doing this with. And he would take all those clips and then he'd throw them into a garbage chute. And do you know what they called that garbage chute? It was actually called the memory hole. That's actually where we get the phrase memory hole from. So we put them into the memory hole, and at the bottom of the memory hole was an incinerator, right? This was the plot of 1984, right? And then he eventually kind of goes on and sort of awakened to the truth of what's really happening. But with people like Nina Yankovic who are coming out, and this disinformation board, they want to erect that same kind of edifice here in the United States. And what's amazing to me, and when you watch these TikToks from her, that she really feels like she's one of the good guys here.
Yes.
That she's fighting the Russian trolls and the bots and disinformation, as if, it's like, who actually decided that you would be having the ability to decide what is true and what is false in the United States? When did we ever allow or give power to the government to do this? Again, something that's not found in the Constitution. But what I really do love is that when they talk to Mayorkas, and even when they talk to Jen Psaki about this, is that nobody seems to want to claim, the fact that they hired her or even decided to put this board up. I'm pretty sure, I actually get the feeling that, again, Politico, I think she leaked the story herself, because she wanted to see her name in Politico, because it was mentioned in Playbook by Daniel Lippman, but it wasn't, there was no actual reporting on the creation of the board. It was just the reporting of her being hired. So I think she leaked it herself. Then she posts the photo, this official portrait of her. But I noticed
I can't believe she really posted that.
I believe it. I believe it. This is part and parcel of who this person is. This is that type of personality where it's all about her. It's all about what she's getting. It's all about her credibility, her TikToks, her, Harry Potter videos, everything else. It's like there's literally no self-awareness whatsoever.
Very clearly. But, to go back to 1984, it's interesting hearing you kind of run through the premise of the novel. The idea that you're going to erase part of history. You look at what has been happening in our schools across America right now, and you see elements of that have already been in play. It is, whenever you kind of take a step back and really look at it, there's so many things that we've learned over the past 2 years, and maybe that's a blessing in disguise of COVID, that was happening at the school level. If we had known about these things 10 years ago, it would have just been unfathomable to people. And yet we're here, and there are so many people that are kind of like, well, I guess that's just how it's done now. On the other hand, you have a lot of moms and dads out there. I know you're a father of two. I believe you're in Virginia. Is that right?
The DC area.
Okay, DC area. Well, we know Virginia voted in the gubernatorial election for Glenn Youngkin. And it was all because of parents that had learned what was happening at the school level, parents that felt like they had no voice in their child's education. As we head towards the midterms, do you feel like this is still going to be a major issue for voters all across America? What's happening at kids' schools? Do you think parents are paying attention now?
Oh, I really do. And I think that one of the silver linings, right, if you can find one, I'm a glass half full kind of guy. And one of the silver linings really of COVID and of the lockdowns was that when schools went to the Zoom classroom, suddenly parents around the country were looking over the shoulder and say, hey, what's Junior learning in school today? What's the classroom all about? And then, Junior is learning that he's not a boy, he's actually a girl, and that he should have a different name. And they're presenting all these topics in, what would be like a math class. And they're talking about gender and race and some of these very complex issues to children. And suddenly they're realizing that, wait a minute, maybe those conservatives who were telling us that the schools are indoctrinating our children all those years, maybe they actually had a little bit of a point. And then families started becoming more, because I get it, right? I get it. It's people aren't stupid, but people are busy, right? Voters aren't stupid, but voters are busy, right? That's kind of the idea. And so when you say, look, I'm in a good school district, I'm in a good zip code, we pay this much to the school, look how great our facilities are, the gym, the sports team, the computers, things are good to go, that's a good school, my kid's getting a good education, right? But you're not really looking over the shoulder as much at what actually happens in the classroom. And how could you, right? How could you?
Yeah.
But when you're at home on lockdown and you're watching this and you realize what's going on, I think it's activated parents in a way. And this is what you and I talked about last time, but it hits you on a very deep level. It hits you on a very deep level, both spiritually and biologically, that someone is trying to change or indoctrinate your children in a way that maybe isn't consistent with the way you were raised, with your beliefs, with your values. By the way, I actually, a couple of months ago, here at humanevents.com, we actually had the ability to have an insider at Disney leak us internal messages from the forum at Disney. They call it the hub. And of course, they don't call them employees at Disney. They call them cast members, right? So it's one of the cast members. And he says this internal, and I think he was at one of the parks, and he's sending us these messages, and we posted them all incognito, anonymous, and people working at the park saying, look, I don't really have a position on the bill, but I don't understand why this is something that a teacher should be involved in, talking about DeSantis's law,
right?
That shouldn't this be something that's between the children and their parents, that, this is not a kind of talk that you want to have ever with some, kindergarten teacher, first grade, second grade, third grade, all the way up. Like, this should be something that's traditionally within the scope of the family. But then, of course, Biden was out there right? And putting his foot right in his mouth again, because he had that quote just, I think about a week ago here when he's talking to that teachers group. And he said, when those children are in the classroom, they are not other people's children. They are yours. That right there is what needs to change in this country, because there ain't nobody whose kids, who has control of my kids other than me.
Absolutely.
Those are our children, period. End of story. And we actually, the Moms for Liberty, I interviewed her recently, and I said, would you respond to Joe Biden? And she said, and this is something I could never say, but she goes, let me tell you something, President Biden, you didn't carry my children. I did. So that's pretty much the end of that.
Well, Jack, you could say that if you're using the pregnant man emoji.
Oh, you're right. I forgot. That's right. Men can get pregnant. But see, this goes back to Roe v. Wade, because they say, well, men can't have a position on abortion because only women can get pregnant. I say, men can get pregnant now too, so we can have a position on abortion. Checkmate.
See how it's full circle. I love what we're doing here. We're solving all the problems here today. I got to ask you about Hillary Clinton, because you love to say that Hillary is definitely running again in 2024. Please enlighten us. What do we know? Where'd you get this info?
Look. This has been something that's been the dark horse for a long time now. And I keep a very close watch on Hillary Clinton. I track her appearances. I get her notifications on Twitter. Right. Always pay attention to what she's doing. Did you see? Look, and I've been saying this for a long time now. And then she shows up at that Met Gala, just 2 days ago here, with this, elaborate dress, and she's totally done up, and all the servants are around her masked and, at her feet and at her beck and call. And that was a campaign event. Lara, I know you know about campaign events. That was a campaign event. That was a photo op. Notice that Bill was not with her in the photos. Yeah. Notice, because she understands, she knows that because of the Jeffrey Epstein scandal, having her next to Bill would bring that up. But having her aside, this is the Clintons. They are calculating, they are strategic. She will never, ever stop running for president. And she can view the weakness of the Biden administration, the weakness and in the lack of popularity of either him or Kamala Harris. And she's looking at saying, you know what? I can launch a bid to get back in here now. That's where she's going when it comes to Roe v. Wade. That's where she's coming when it comes to showing up at the Met Gala. I guarantee you, she is making phone calls to donors. He is trying to, test the waters, put up these trial balloons about wanting to run for president again.
And all I can say is the only thing better than beating Hillary Clinton once would be beating her twice. And I will not even say anything more. That's it. That's all I'll say. It's just, man, I hope she does it. I would love to have another crack at that. We'll see what happens, but we'll come back to you, Jack, for more info on Hillary Clinton. Before I let you go, this is super important. According to IMDb, you have an acting credit for being in the Jackie.
What are you doing on IMDb? You shouldn't be on there. Don't look at that.
Wait a minute. For being in the Jackie Chan movie, The Forbidden Kingdom. Can you explain this? What happens?
Yeah, so this is like my little claim to fame prior to all this. Yeah, I'm in a movie with Jackie Chan and Jet Li, by the way.
Amazing.
Jet Li's there too. It's the only movie they filmed together. Liu Yifei, who is the actress who later went on to play Mulan, in the Disney movie that they filmed it in Xinjiang and all. She's in the film as well as Michael Argerano plays the main character. When I was doing my study abroad and then living in Shanghai, they came by and they were looking for American actors and said, hey, we're looking for some Americans who are in Shanghai to potentially perform in the Jackie Chan movie. And I'm over there. I'm 21, it's kind of like Tokyo Vice, but Shanghai Vice. And I said, yeah, sure, I'll try out. Why not? And I went to the audition, tried out and got the part. And so I ended up being in that movie. We filmed it for about a month. I got to work with Jackie Chan, got to work with Jet Li. Jet Li's a little bit of a prima donna, I gotta say. Jackie Chan was great though. Jackie Chan was a very nice guy, very good to work with. And,
what were you doing? Were you like doing some kind of martial arts? What was going on?
No. So in the movie, the plot is there's this kid who's into martial arts, but he's getting roughed up by this sort of gang of locals, and I'm one of the roughs. I'm one of the thugs that's kind of on him. in the movie, and then he of course gets transported back into ancient China, learns kung fu, goes on this hero's journey, and comes back, and then kicks all of our butts.
Did you have to train under Corn Pop for this?
I cannot really, I have an NDA, Lara. These Hollywood types, they're very hard to get out of. Corn Pop really speak to whether or not he was there, but his chains and his certain methods of whipping them around the swimming pool may have been employed.
There you go. Little known fact about me, and my brother and I were both extras in the movie The Hudsucker Proxy. You've probably never heard of it.
I've not heard of that one.
Nope. It was filmed in Wilmington, North Carolina, sometime in the 90s, I'm going to say. My brother and I are some kids that are running through the streets in there. If you want a great time, you can watch the whole movie and you can look for us. You probably won't even see us one time.
Oh my gosh.
My claim to fame. That's all I have. So
that's amazing. That's all you got. That's all you got. You'll get there, Lara, though. You'll get there.
I know. I'm waiting. I'm sure I'll get discovered at some point. Before we let you go, though, one more thing. Anything you have coming out? I know you had, we talked about last time your book, The Antifa. You released a comic book at one point. Anything we should look out for? What are you working on?
Well, probably the biggest thing, and we announced it earlier today, is that Human Events, we've really been trying to be the leading edge of the new right in terms of commentary for humanevents.com, but we really wanted to increase our news footprint in terms of what we were doing, and we looked at some of the numbers, and we decided to, you familiar with the blog Post Millennial? Have you seen Post Millennial out there? People have been sharing it a lot lately. Over the past couple of years, they've really built something amazing. And so we've done a merger and acquisition where Human Events formed the Human Events Media Group. We've purchased Post Millennial. So that's Libby Emmons. We've got Andy No involved. We've got a ton of people across the board. So just totally beefing up the staff, the amount of news reporting that we have. It's an international team that we're very excited to be bringing on board now. So we are expanding as CNN Plus is imploding. And I feel sorry to Mr. Brian Stelter. I understand that he lost his daily show, but if I could send him a message, Brian, don't worry. I have an opportunity for you. We are going to need interns. And you seem like a guy that, send us your resume. We'll talk.
I'm sure you can expect that any day. So keep an eye out. I would keep us informed on not only Hillary's run, but that as well, because that could be just a really great fit for Mr. Stelter there, I'm sure. Well, Jack, we appreciate it as always. Thank you for going in depth on the topics with us today. We'll keep an eye out on what you've got going on. Good luck with everything. And Jack Posobiec, thanks for being on The Right View today.
Thanks so much, Lara. God bless.
And to everybody at home, as always, thank you so much for joining us. We'll see you back here next time for more of The Right View.